First they banished me for 15 years, then knocked on my door like nothing happened. The first thing I felt wasn't anger, it was shock. I was standing in my new living room, barefoot on the cold marble floor, holding a cup of tea that had already gone cold. Outside, rain tapped softly against the glass. I had just finished hanging the last curtain, finally feeling like this house was becoming a home. Then the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, my breath caught in my throat. There they were, my family. The same people who had erased me from their lives for 15 long years were standing on my doorstep, staring at me like they had every right to be there. For a moment, time folded in on itself. I was no longer 35, standing in a house I had bought with my own blood and sweat. I was 20 again, broken, unwanted, thrown out with nothing but a small bag and a heart full of questions. My mother looked older. My father's shoulders were slumped. My older brother avoided my eyes, and yet none of them looked sorry. My mother was the first to speak. "We heard you bought a house," she said, her voice calm, almost proud. "We thought it was time we visited." Time. 15 years ago, they had told me I was no longer their son. Now they were worried about timing. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stood there, staring, as memories I had buried deep began clawing their way back to the surface. It had all started with one decision. I was the youngest in the family. Quiet, dreamy. I loved books, late night walks, and the idea that life could be more than survival. My family didn't understand that. In our house, dreams were a luxury. You did what you were told. You followed tradition. You didn't ask questions. My older brother was the golden child. Strong, confident, always doing the right thing. I was the odd one. The one who wanted to study literature instead of business. The one who believed kindness wasn't weakness. Every dinner felt like a trial. Every opinion I shared felt like a mistake. Slowly, I learned to stay silent, to shrink myself so others could feel comfortable. The breaking point came when I refused to marry the woman they had chosen for me. She was kind, but I didn't love her, and I didn't want to live a life built on lies. I tried to explain. I begged them to listen. I told them I needed time, that I wanted to choose my own path. My father's face turned to stone that night. "You choose this," he said, pointing toward the door, "or you choose this family." I thought he was bluffing. I was wrong. That same night, my clothes were thrown into a bag. My mother didn't cry. My brother didn't speak. My father opened the door and stood aside. "Don't come back," he said. "From today you are nothing to us." I still remember stepping outside, the door closing behind me with a final, hollow sound. The streetlight flickered above. I stood there, numb, waiting for someone to stop me. No one did. The first few years were hell. I slept on friends' couches until they ran out of patience. I worked jobs that barely paid enough to eat. I learned what hunger felt like, what loneliness felt like. I learned how quiet the world becomes when no one cares if you exist. I washed dishes until my hands cracked. I worked night shifts where no one spoke my name. Some days, the only words I heard were orders. On my birthday, I would stare at my phone, hoping for a message that never came. On holidays, I worked double shifts so I wouldn't have to feel the emptiness. There were nights I almost gave up. I would sit on the edge of a borrowed bed, staring at the wall, wondering if being alive was worth the effort. But somewhere deep inside, a stubborn voice kept whispering, "Survive." So I did. I went back to school part-time. It took years. I studied at night after work, my eyes burning, my hands shaking from exhaustion. People laughed when I told them what I wanted to do. "Writing doesn't pay," they said. "Be realistic." I had learned that realism was what had destroyed my life once already. I wasn't going to let it do it again. Slowly, painfully, things began to change. A small article I wrote got noticed. Then another. Then a chance to write full-time, for very little money, but enough to breathe. I lived in tiny apartments where the walls were thin and the winters were cold. I ate cheap food. I walked everywhere. But for the first time, my life felt like it belonged to me. I made mistakes. I failed more times than I succeeded. But each failure was mine. Each lesson shaped me into someone stronger, someone quieter, someone patient. Years passed. I stopped checking my phone on my birthday. I stopped hoping for apologies that would never come. I built friendships that felt like family. People who showed up. People who listened. People who didn't make love conditional. I learned how to trust again, slowly, carefully. And then, one day, I bought a house. It wasn't huge. It wasn't perfect. But it was mine. Every wall, every corner, every quiet evening belonged to the man I had become through pain and patience. I didn't tell anyone in my family. I didn't need to. Or so I thought. Standing there in the doorway, 15 years of silence pressing between us, my mother sighed. "Aren't you going to invite us in?" she asked. Something inside me shifted. All those years, I had imagined this moment. I thought I would scream. I thought I would cry. I thought I would finally say all the things I had rehearsed in my head during sleepless nights. Instead, I felt strangely calm. "You can come in," I said, stepping aside. Their eyes moved around the house as they entered. The clean floors, the shelves filled with books, the framed photos of friends, travels, small moments of joy. I could see the surprise on their faces. "You did well," my father said quietly, sitting down. I almost laughed. They sat on my couch like guests, like strangers. No apologies, no questions about my life, no acknowledgement of the years they had stolen from me. Finally, my brother spoke. "Things have been difficult," he said. "The business failed. Dad's health isn't great. We thought maybe we could start over." There it was. Not regret. Need. I looked at them one by one and realized something that hit harder than any insult ever had. They hadn't come because they missed me. They came because they needed me. I went to the kitchen, poured fresh tea, and brought it back. My hands were steady. My heart was loud, but clear. "Do you remember?" I asked softly. "The night you told me I was nothing to you." My father looked down. My mother shifted uncomfortably. "You said I wasn't your son anymore," I continued. "Do you know how long it takes to rebuild yourself after hearing that from the people who made you?" Silence filled the room. "I spent 15 years learning how to live without you," I said. "I learned how to survive alone, how to forgive myself for being different, how to build a life without your approval." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "We were afraid," she whispered. "We thought we were doing the right thing." I nodded. "Maybe you were," I said. "For yourselves." They looked up at me, hope flickering. "But here's the truth," I continued. "I didn't build this life to fill the emptiness you left. I built it despite you." I stood up. "You're welcome to sit here today," I said. "You're welcome to drink my tea. But you don't get to walk back into my life like nothing happened." My brother's voice cracked. "So that's it." I met his eyes. "This is honesty." "I'm not closing the door out of revenge," I said. "I'm closing it because I finally learned my worth." I walked to the door and opened it. They stood slowly, awkwardly, like people realizing too late that the world had moved on without them. At the door, my father stopped. "I am sorry," he said, his voice barely audible. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt something unexpected. Peace. "I forgive you," I said. "But forgiveness doesn't mean access." They left. The door closed behind them, not with anger, but with finality. I stood there for a long time, listening to the rain. That night, I sat alone in my living room, lights dimmed, heart full. Not of bitterness, not of victory, but of something far more powerful. Freedom. Some wounds don't need revenge to heal. They need truth. They need boundaries. They need the courage to choose yourself, even when the people who hurt you share your blood. Family isn't who shows up when you succeed. Family is who stands with you when you have nothing. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is build a beautiful life without waiting for anyone's permission.